It's the show that all of you have been waiting for quite some time. Penn State football's coaching candidate is in front of us. We're going to be talking about today. Kalani Sitake is the name that has emerged as Penn State's top target in the coaching search. And the guy who's been working on this for almost 2 months now and has been giving you the information, Nate Bauer. He's here to join you in the one thing, Nate, I'm going to say this off the bat. One of Pat Kraft's first things he said when talking about what he wanted at his next head coach is he wanted somebody who would, quote, unite the fan base. Just taking a look here. I don't know that they're totally united in how they feel about Kalani Sitake being the next head coach at Penn State, if that is what comes to pass here. So welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Good. I slept well last night. How are you? You got some Christmas decorations. That's exciting.
Yeah. I did not sleep well, but that's a side point. That is just because I hurt myself benching yesterday, not necessarily because I was worried or concerned about anything going on. Thank you for asking, though. I'm fine. I'll be all right. It's snowing in State College today. There is school cancellation, so these guys are playing through injury on the show today. So if you hear anything in the background, now you know why. Sean Fitz, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's probably mine.
No, that was definitely Nate's. Yeah. Mine are old enough to not care about me being on live, so they're downstairs on their devices for an hour.
I was going to say, they're playing video games?
They're playing a video game. That was my roundabout way of saying they're playing a video game right now. So... No,
that's what I did. Yeah, when I was home from school, it's absolutely like, oh yeah, no, it's GameCube all day for sure.
Yeah, no, they're not worried in the least about Penn State, BYU, any of that stuff. So they're pretty well in bliss right now. Which can't say the same about the chat. They're very engaged right now. We appreciate the engagement, so thank you for that.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to start out with this because we're going to get into it, and we're going to talk about all the things today. So subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel and like this video. I'm going to forget to say that later. I always appreciate people when you do that. It really helps us out. Algorithms, whatchamacallit, all that stuff, because we don't do content that is just tailored for virality. We do old school, like we're going to sit down and talk for an hour, give you some long form content. We treat you like an adult so that you can like digest this stuff. And so we do need your help on that side of, hey, you got to engage with it. You got to help us out just a little bit so we can get you the information you want to know. And the information we have today is that Penn State, as I said, has narrowed down its search. The top target that we've been talking about over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, the mystery man. The target is revealed. It is Kalani Sitake, the head coach at BYU. So, Nate, before you get into anything, I'm going to do this, and I got a little bit of a thing to do here. So here's the thing, and I'm going to do a swear. Nate puts up with a lot of shit because the way he goes about trying to report these things is ethically, journalistically appropriate, and has been doing his best to give information to people over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, talk about the things he can't talk about just yet, and be a journalist. And so we haven't been following every name that has come up in the recruiting cycle. And that's not to say that those names weren't valid or invalid, or they were or were not part of the national conversation about the search for Penn State's head coach. But Nate has done things differently. And as the lead man on this, I just want to give him his credit for being on point throughout this whole thing, because we all know that Nate is not an egomaniac and certainly would not do that himself. So
you know that every time you do that, people just hate me more.
Sorry.
I mean,
what were you saying?
But...
What were you saying, Nate? Okay.
I'm not even engaging in this with you. Okay. It's fine. It's fine. No,
let's get to the timeline, because this has been something that has been percolating in the background for a little bit. And I know that's a great place to start with the facts as far as how this has come about. So, Nate, How has this come about?
What part? The guy?
Yes. This
Yeah, I
particular
mean,
name, this particular
yeah.
situation.
Yeah, Sitaki. No, look, I think that there's a general premise that I'm not sure everyone has kind of wrapped their heads around it. It's hard because there's like a flavor of the day, right? On Twitter, whatever, right? And that's just kind of how it works, and people latch on to that person, and then the conversation grows around it, which is fine.
Right.
But like, I think that for Penn State and the way that hiring processes actually work is Penn State was very thorough in keeping an open mind and trying to cast a wide net. And then a friend of mine used to say this about recruiting years ago. His phrase was always "run the race." Right? You're running the race, and you don't exactly know what the course is for the race, but you're running. And
Right.
As you move along, things will become clear to you more and more. And through this process, Sitaki was a guy who impressed, and just like, it was just consistent. And all of those interactions were to the effect of, like, was he the number one overall, right, home run hire from the beginning of this? No, like, saying otherwise would be disingenuous, right? That's not
Right.
That's not real. Mike Elko was absolutely an early and frequent target, but through the process, when you started to pool everybody else and look through all of the other candidates, this is a guy that stood out. And I think the fact that, now that it's, kind of out there, right? It's a guy that Penn State feels confident is, it is confident that it's in a position to land him as its next head coach. And that's important for Penn State.
So I just want to follow up on something that you said. So this is something that David is saying here, and this is a common theme both on the Blue White Illustrated message board, on the coaching search thread, also on the internet, on the social medias, and here in the chat, is the whole coaching thing has been a complete disaster. So you mentioned that Penn State has cast a wide net, and the fact that they have had a lot of names. Urban Meyer has been public. Conversations with, you just mentioned Mike Elko, just like the names, like all the names that have come up, and you addressed that there. But does every name mean that was a candidate that said no? And like, that's what happened, is that Penn State kept striking out with every single name that showed up out there? Or is there a difference in interviewed, had a conversation, but like obviously wasn't a fit? Or there's something other things going on with those candidates that were interviewed throughout this process?
Yeah, there's very clearly a difference. It's not to say that Penn State thought it's the people who it kicked the tires for were bad coaches, right? I mean, and I think this was a part of our conversation early in the process was Pat Fitzgerald. He's still an impressive guy. There's a reason why he's had success, and there's a reason why people gravitate toward him. Just not a Penn State fit. But
right,
interviewing Pat Fitzgerald and him not being Penn State's next head coach does not mean Penn State missed on Pat Fitzgerald. It means it kicked the tires, and for a variety of reasons, it wasn't the time or place for him to be at Penn State. And I think that situation played itself out, over a number of different candidates. I'm going to keep some of the juice for our message board in terms of guys who impressed in Penn State, like pursued, more fully, and may have gotten no answers back from. But I think that list of no's is considerably smaller than people are having a conversation about right now. And not only that, but guys and candidates who Penn State was like actively pursuing, right? Like Penn State wanted,
Right.
Is like even smaller. It's just not doing due diligence and actually, pursuing somebody those are different things.
Yeah. Fitz, how have you viewed this process? And I guess what's your perspective on Kalani Sitake as a fit at Penn State? Because that's the next thing. Is everyone in chat is saying this is obviously not a fit because he's never coached west of the Mississippi before. So I have my thoughts. I'll give them after you give some of them, but just give your opening statement of how you've seen this play out and the end result here.
Yeah, I think that's one of the few fair criticisms you could label there is the fit here being an outsider, if you will, because we talked during the Kalen DeBoer flirtation about fit at Alabama, and that stuff seems to matter, and it matters more down south than it does in the north. But Utah to State College is a long way, not incredibly different. Like it's the LDS aspect of it does change some things, but you've got two fairly similar areas, I would think. T. Frank, I'll defer to you on Utah expertise. Much cooler.
I've been so valuable this week. It's amazing.
You really are. Like you're our Utah guy. We might send you there for Christmas or something like that. But to see the family. No, but that is the criticism, right? Like there's very few connections out this way. You look at his staff; it's a lot of BYU guys, and that's the way that BYU operates. Is they've got the BYU lifers, and when they made the change from Mendenhall to Sitake, that a lot of those guys. I don't know that a lot of these exact guys stayed, but you have a lot of guys that are drawn to staying to that entire area and that entire culture, if you will. So there's that aspect of it. The recruiting aspect is going to be tough because you see this guy, and by the way. If you field feedback from all over the country, from guys that have covered him, from guys who have coached with him, coached against him, been around him at coaching conventions and things like that, it's universally positive. This guy's an awesome coach. Like there's no real debating that. He's got BYU on the doorstep of the college football playoff. Now I think they lose to Texas Tech on Saturday and they don't make it, but he can absolutely freaking coach, and he's a tongue and fullback. Like you want your program to be tougher? Yeah, hire a tongue and fullback. How about
right.
That? But at the same time, like I think there are many different, culture changes, many different exceptions that have to be made for something like that. But the guy's a hell of a football coach, and that's what I keep going back to. Is like you wanted the coach, you wanted the football, like air quotes around the football coach. Like that is a guy that's got it, and he's a personality that will attract people to State College, will attract players to State College. I think it's gonna be very tough, especially with the guy that was just here that knows the region, that has the relationships with guys from all over that general same radius. Now 6 hours away at Virginia Tech. I think that makes it difficult. Mike Locksley's still there. For everything that Mike Locksley isn't, he is a great recruiter. You've seen some top level guys go to Maryland that frankly shouldn't. But at the same time, that's going to be an outsider stepping into this entire area. So to me, the biggest question that I would have, and if this hire would become official, is how does he mitigate that by hiring Penn State guys, by hiring regional guys, by hiring guys that have connections here. That goes to our question from David. On a serious note, do you have any idea if Terry and others will be around if Sitake is the hire? I don't. That conversation is something that I think Pat Kraft has talked to candidates about keeping guys like Terry, keeping guys like the recruiting staff, keeping a guy like Jim Knowles, even if that can come to it. Like that those conversations have been had, but not to the level of, well, Terry says if this guy's going to come here, then he's going to go, or this guy's going to come here, he's going to stay. I don't think they're at that spot. I think he's definitely in the mix for whoever this next coach is, which Sitake's the top target for a reason. I think that he would listen. But I also think he's got an option in Blacksburg. He's probably got options elsewhere, and could probably, if he sees this time as his window to be a head coach, could pursue smaller jobs as well.
That's what I was going to ask, because I think that's on the table. I think the way Penn State played at the end of the season and the turnaround you saw from them on an execution standpoint, I think that lends credibility to the idea that Terry Smith might just strike out on his own. It's not a foregone conclusion that he's in one of two places for the upcoming season, or in the future, because it's something that he obviously said it reawakened in him that he could do this, that could be a head coach. So I want to circle back to kind of the recruiting aspect of this. And this is just my general statement on what I've learned of football coaches. And we talk about, I'll get your feedback on this, Fitz. What do regional relationships mean when you're recruiting as a head coach at a football program? And what does fit mean? Fit is something that you create with relationships. And from what I know of coaches, the thing that other coaches love, meaning high school coaches, is like an old school football coach. If you speak their language, if you come in and you have that common theme, common idea of maybe you don't understand the region, but you understand football, you have that common language. That's 60% of it. Of like, everyone's here for football. And then the relationships of getting to know somebody, that is a thing that comes as a natural offshoot of the football part of it. And some of the things that I've done, some of the things I'm going to talk about over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com in an article at some point this week, is like, if you're looking for a guy that is a football coach, an old school guy, a guy that fits the Penn State DNA, right? Lavelle Edwards is the BYU Joe Paterno. This is a guy who is a descendant of that lineage, of that coaching tree, of the old school mentality of football. He fits Penn State incredibly well from the core aspects of it. The other thing I find interesting is, having listened to him speak, the X's and O's part of it is not something that he's incredibly interested in discussing. Now, he's a defensive guy, but when you hear him speak, he is going to talk about, it starts with I love you and ends with I love you. It's going to talk about incremental growth, 1% better every day. It's going to talk about alignment. It's going to talk about success with honor. He's going to say, maybe that last one I added in there as an incidental, he's going to talk about and going to say things that are incredibly similar to what James Franklin said. How he delivers it is going to be different. And to me, that authenticity and kind of the down-to-earth nature is what he's known for. But the words and the overall program prescription, I think, Nate, is in a similar vein to what they just had. So you get what you just had in a certain sense of that kind of programmatic building. And then you have a guy who maybe aligns better with what you think of, if you're Pat Kraft, the vision of what Penn State wants to be. Like that tough-nosed football in the new NIL era, a guy that isn't, and by the way, from their recruiting, a guy that isn't afraid to spend money, but doesn't make money the forefront of what they're trying to do. So I guess from the last thing I have here is the question of the if surrounding this, because we're here on a Tuesday. Yep. Big 12 championship game is coming up this weekend. Does the news coming out early this week and the style and the nature in which it did, does it hurt the team's chances of actually landing him? Like, what is there's a fear in the chat of, okay, here's plan A. Now plan A is being flirted with, like his school is making the counteroffer. I guess, how do you view the way this all played out last night and today as far as now closing the deal?
Yeah, I think that's always the proposition, is no matter what you offer and no matter what is said and no matter how those conversations go, there always comes a point where you put in this case, your finger on your trackpad and scroll what would look like a signature on a digital DocuSign. That you have to do that. That's the last step. Is you've got a contract, it's in front of you, you've maybe said that you're coming, or maybe you said you've needed to think about it, whatever that situation is. Push comes to shove when it's time to sign the contract, and that hasn't changed. Right? No matter whether this is public or not, that dynamic has not changed. So does it maybe make things a little bit different? Sure. I think that it is fair to describe the BYU media ecosystem locally and nationally as being drastically different from the Lane Kiffin, right? Like anything that was going on in the SEC any of that hysteria and hoopla. I don't think that's really as relevant here. BYU is going to play in the Big 12 championship game this weekend. And after that, depending on the outcome, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, that is the rubber to the road moment. Is all of this stuff, and it's actually kind of funny. Like last year during the Jim Knowles process, and something that James Franklin said, kind of after the fact, about people were saying it was done when it wasn't done. In his mind, and this is true, it's just not done until that happens, until that document is in. There's always this room for backing out or having cold feet or having second thoughts. You can have the best of intentions as the hirer and as the candidate, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. And sometimes it does. The notion that these things are going to be predictable. We actually, we had an interview with Mike Rhodes yesterday, his weekly press conference, and Mark Brennan at 24/7 asked him about his recollections of the hiring process, right? Taking a job and how that all went. And his main response, to summarize, was just, you have no idea. Right? Like the public, you don't get it. And I think I'm extrapolating a little bit on his behalf here, but the biggest part to me is, one, as the candidate, you don't know what the hirer is doing outside of their interest with you, what their backup plans are, how all of those things are arranged. But then also from the public side of thing, and certainly from the hirer's side of things, you don't know what's motivating the candidate, right? In terms of how the candidate is actually making that decision, it's impossible to work through people's heads in terms of what ultimately sways them to make a decision one way or the other.
Let's get into the timeline of what is next, because I think that's another aspect of what we're talking about here is the landing the plane, and the things that have to happen over the next couple of days and situations. Fitz has mysteriously vanished. We're going to find out what's going on there in a second, because the questions are in the chat. Recruiting class, what's going to happen? Early signing period starts soon. BYU, they have implications with that class as well. Then you have transfers and transfer announcements. From your perspective, obviously there is the issue with how things got out and the actual landing of the candidate, but from the perspective of the news being out there, do you expect that this helps, hinders, or is neutral in keeping the current players on the roster? At least giving them something to think about as far as, okay, now I know what my new coach is. I can start to learn a little bit more, and then I can make a decision instead of immediately peace out, I'm going to the portal, see you later in 2026.
Yeah, I don't they don't have to go into the portal today, right? It's not
right.
That's not the timeline there. So sure, they can start to talk about it and they can have those conversations. Again, this isn't over, right? This isn't done. So until that DocuSign is in, a lot of this is just external conversation that really is not impacting it getting over the finish line. Yeah. But players are having those conversations all the time anyway, right? This isn't like a revisionist thing. This is, hey, even if James Franklin was still Penn State's head coach, every player in that locker room, every single year, probably at least once a month through that year, is talking to teammates about whether or not they're staying at Penn State or going somewhere else, right? Like that is what college football is today. So right, I think it's,
but there's less tethering everyone to their seats when there isn't
100%.
a head coach. And so, like, if you are now drawing in pencil the head coach into his seat, that's my curiosity. And Fitz, I want to come back to you on the recruiting side of this. I will now address the conversation about BYU, their specific recruiting players of religious faith and the honor code and everything that goes into going to BYU versus recruiting at a place like Penn State, and the overlap of classes, the rank of the classes, and keeping Penn State, the players that are still not committed to Virginia Tech. How do you see any of these announcements changing or augmenting what people feel like is doomsday? And it's a day away. Early signing period starts tomorrow, I think it is. So how does all of this news wrap into what people are terrified of, which is a 0-person recruiting class coming up in 2026?
Well, I think you're going to be watching BYU's class, maybe even closer than Penn State's. If this indeed continues to go through where, he is eventually going to leave for Penn State, you're going to see communication flowering in that he's probably telling guys not to sign. And that's an interesting sort of landmark in all this. Like, again, like November 30th was a landmark, not a deadline. December 3rd is a landmark because you can keep that signing period open until Friday, December 5th. And that's going to probably tell you some things. So I think that you're looking at that first and foremost if you're talking about the Sitaki aspect of it. From a Penn State perspective, 0, like maybe Jackson Ford. I mean, that's what you're looking at right now. This is something I should have trademarked it as collateral damage.
Yep.
Like I said back in October, because that's what it's going to be. I didn't think it would hemorrhage.
Would any coach have saved this situation?
If they hired someone on Sunday, maybe some of it. Like a lot of those guys are going to end up at Virginia Tech. Some of those guys, North Carolina came in, I think got 3 or 4 of them. But I think that Virginia Tech is the main one. But you're looking at a situation where you would have at least given those guys time to listen. And the guys that were committed didn't have to visit. They didn't have to get back on campus and see things like if this coaching change happened, excuse me, that's my dogs now. Nate, we should have kept a scorecard on kids versus dogs because we are elite. So if you're looking at sorry, I got completely off track. If you're looking at this class as a whole, you're trying to save it. So if you make this decision to get rid of Franklin at the end of November, I think you save some of that. Like you save some of yourself that, because there are kids that still trust Penn State enough. That trust sort of wore off in the first couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden you saw it rolling downhill. I think you're seeing that kind of with Florida right now. Now Florida has made a hire, so they're going to be able to recoup some of that. LSU has obviously upgraded, I think. I don't want to say obviously, but they've upgraded, and LSU is a different animal. But Penn State finds itself in a situation where they're going to maybe sign one guy tomorrow, if that. I think Jackson Ford was down at Virginia Tech the last weekend that he could have visited, so it could very well be 0. But I mean, the argument from the start has been you don't sign a class you don't pass up on the right guy to sign a class. I kind of think we passed that intersection. We passed that exit a little bit ago. So now you're not signing a class, and I think Sitaki can be the right guy, absolutely. But you've folded. You've taken a knee on this one. So that's where you're looking for the 26 class. The 26 class, if you're taking if you got a pie chart of what's important now, 26 class is actually pretty small. But at the same time, it's still part of it. It's still a part of your future. It's still part of the roster building. And if you're going to continue to build that culture, or to I guess extend that fabric of the program, it's always about recruiting here. It's never been about the portal, which you're going to see change quite a bit in the next month.
So I just want to ask you this. Dennis Durst is now convinced we will be bottom half of the Big Ten from now on. And there's obviously a vocal negativity around any decision that isn't somebody's personal preference. And I'm not saying Dennis is or isn't has a favorite. I'm just saying this is a general vibe around the program, and whether it's because of the people don't know who Kalani Sitake is because they don't watch Western games, I don't blame them. My wife is a Utah alum. She does not watch University of Utah games because they're on at 10 o'clock at night. So you probably haven't seen anything of the last 9 years of Kalani Sitake. There's no real connection here to BYU. And then, of course, we have the conversation Fitz and I just had about the recruiting element of this. So I guess I want to ask, this is a long way around to a short question. How important is the class of 2026, this particular year, these particular players that we've gotten to know over the last year and a half, to the future of Penn State, to where Dennis is right. And Penn State is now a bottom feeder in the Big Ten. They missed a recruiting class. 25 players aren't coming to the program. And suddenly now the program is trash. Is that a one-to-one correlation that people are making in this decision process?
I mean, it's easier to panic, right? It's easier to panic about things that you don't know than try and actually understand what's going on here, right? I mean, you said people don't know about Sitaki. You could have just cut off about Sitaki there. Like, when you don't know, that's when you get fearful. And when you get fearful, that's when you panic and you say this kind of stuff. I mean, we've seen it for the last couple of weeks. If Penn State hires Sitaki, it's not going to run the program into the ground. Like, there are, I think, questionable aspects of this coaching search. Absolutely. I think that's completely warranted to criticize how long this has taken and how this was not resolved in that manner. But if you hire the right guy, it does not matter. Like, and if they think that he's the right guy and he comes in and wins some games, he's won a hell of a lot of games at BYU. That doesn't matter. He will attract players. Winning attracts players. Winning attracts donors. Winning attracts everybody to be on the same page. And if you're sitting here on December 2nd, 2025, before Penn State even has a hire, I mean, they haven't gotten it across the line yet, then, and saying that this program is a crater, like, what are we basing that on? Like, and this is the same as me turning around and saying Penn State's going to win a national championship next year. Like, there's no factual basis for any of this stuff. I often, you allude to like Tiger Woods in his heyday. Like, there's this guy that I'm not even going to say the name, but it would be like saying I take the field over Tiger Woods, and then when Tiger Woods finishes second, you pound your chest and say you're right. Like, what are we doing here? Like, that is how I'm looking at the situation of this known outcome, literally from our entire chat right now. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, you look at the three biggest name hires last cycle. Bill Belichick went 5-7.
Yep. He got to 5 wins. Good for him.
He got to 5 wins. Yeah, he did a hell of a job. I mean, it's that youthful. We're going to stay out of that one. But the biggest name hires have not even come close to what the expectations were some of the also-rans, the guys that you didn't think were. I mean, Jim Mora Jr. went to UConn. Everybody thought that was a terrible hire. Now all of a sudden he's vaulting himself to a new job. Like, you don't know how good a football coach is going to be. You don't know how disastrous. Excuse me, I don't know what that was. That wasn't my kids or my dogs. You don't know how disastrous it absolutely could be. So, like, saying this stuff with certainty doesn't make any sense.
Bill Gomez says BYU media acting like Sitaki didn't interview for USC and Oregon jobs, which he did. None of this should be a surprise to them over there. They are certainly very happy that he is their head coach, and they would like to retain him, which is why I think Penn State fans are so concerned about, like, this not actually happening, even though half of them have no interest in having Kalani Sitake be the head coach.
I think there's an important point to make on the heels of that is, like, Oregon makes sense. USC makes sense. Why? There's a large Polynesian influence on both of those programs, and out west. Like, the Polynesian influence out west, very different than the one in the east. And that's a big deal. Like, I mean, Venga is like an alien here, like, because he's awesome. Number one, he's awesome, but, like, we treated him like he was some sort of, like, Fabergé egg that came in from somewhere else, and where if he goes to Oregon or if he goes to USC, he fits in more. Like that. Like, that is the whole aspect of this. Why it doesn't make sense. And I get it from BYU perspective. I get it. Why would you go from basically not even just west of the Mississippi, but Rocky Mountains and west to State College, Pennsylvania? It doesn't make a ton of sense, but when you see some of the numbers floating around there, you're like, oh, well, okay, that makes a little bit of sense. And he's been there since 2016, and Bronco Mendenhall made a similar move to Virginia before he got this job. So, like, it's happened in the past. It wasn't the best thing for Mendenhall, I don't think. I mean, he was okay at Virginia, not wonderful. Virginia's a tough place to win at. It's a different network, a different podcast, but you're looking at a situation here that's unprecedented, and those on that side don't know how to handle it. I mean, we also don't know how to handle it as well. Like, this is a name that was silent for a month in the search. Like, this is, Nate, this is something, I don't know how much you were talking about this. This is not something that popped up this weekend. Like, Penn State did not get through a bunch of candidates and say, where can we turn, spun the wheel, and landed on Provo, Utah. That's not what happened. Like, they've been talking to him for a while. They've been very impressed with him for a while. And believe it or not, like, really liked him over some of the names that you guys keep bringing up in the chat that frankly haven't been options.
So, Nate, I want to throw this to you. I know you had some thoughts there. We do have to get to Antifragile here at some point, but obviously this is a very important topic, and I want to make sure we get to some of these things. So, Rob Sherrill asks, could one of you please explain why Penn State interests Sitaki on the other side? So let me just throw out what I've seen of their offense so far. I've gotten through a couple of games of offense, haven't even gotten to the defense. But generally what I see from the BYU offense, an 11-1 team, is they are not talented to the level of a Big Ten team. Not to Penn State's caliber of talent. So if you're saying like he's maximized what he can do at BYU from a recruiting standpoint, from a resources standpoint, and he's a guy that seeks out new challenges and wants to be challenged, and he wants to face Ohio State, he wants to face Michigan, he wants to be in the college football playoff and wants all of those opportunities for himself as a person, and feels like as much as he loves his alma mater, doesn't feel like it's actually going to work there because of some of the Stanford level things that might be an issue in terms of recruiting. This is an opportunity for the person to make a move for their career. Penn State is an attractive job, and as much as everyone in the chat thinks that Penn State is the most attractive job and should be able to get whatever candidate they prefer, that may not be true, but it is truer than it is for BYU in terms of Penn State's position in the college football landscape. So that's to give you an answer of why Penn State for Kalani Sitaki. There's a fit from a DNA perspective we talked about earlier, and there's the opportunity for him to reach some of his personal goals, because having done some work on him, he is a highly motivated individual that wants to succeed at the highest level. Shocker, he's a college football coach, which takes a certain level of psychosis to do that in the first place. You don't do that if you're like, you know what? I'm fine just being okay at what I do. So with that, Nate, I do want to pivot you and reorient the conversation, talk about beer for a hot second, which will not be a conversation Kalani Sitaki is overly involved with, but one that we know well. So tell us about Antifragile Brewing Company in downtown State College. Great place on a holiday weekend with a little bit of snow to bunker down and have a conversation with some friends at the bar.
It is so great. And beer, I could use one. Honestly, I would love to have an Antifragile beer today. Maybe not right now. It's still the morning, but yeah, the best beer at State College by far. It is this microbrew with an always changing menu, and that always changing menu is new stuff, right? Stuff that you haven't had before, but always like no matter when you go, there will be something reliable that will impress you. So yeah, it is on East Calder Way, right downtown. Games are over for football, but certainly there are still basketball games coming and other events, wrestling, you name it, that are still on the calendar. Even December graduation, right? So whenever you're in town, if you're local, certainly go check it out. And if you're coming from out of town, make sure you stop by. People have done so religiously this season, and it's been so great to hear. We either run into people who say that they came to see us, which is like the most flattering thing in the world, or our friends who are some of the bartenders there always reflect to us that people came in and said that they were looking for us. So it is great to have them as a partner with us, and go check it out.
So I want to get to some of the questions in the chat. We've said this is not across the line, and so it's not something that we can say like this is the next head coach, although Nate, your reporting has been like what it is about the situation. So let's get into a slight hypothetical, because it is a reality. As you said, until it's signed, it's not signed. What happens if if there's a reversal, or as people in the chat are saying, BYU is pushing as hard as they can to keep him? They do have resources at BYU. Money is not necessarily a stumbling block in this conversation for BYU. So I'm not asking you for specific names, but contingency. How I'm sure they've thought of a contingency plan. I guess what's your interpretation of that? I don't know. I don't know how to ask you this without asking you for slight details. And I know that reporting that is kind of sensitive at the current time.
No, I would just convey that the entire situation, the entire process from the very beginning is if this, then that. And you game plan for any variety of outcomes, including identifying a target and it not working out, right? It's less frequent to get to this part of the process where you have somebody and you're in this deep of conversations and you think it's going to work. And then there's some drama that it doesn't, like, but it happens. It happens quite frequently, actually. It's just a matter of when that happens, what do you do? And I do think that certainly Penn State has had enough irons in the fire, right, through this process to feel like if there is a contingency needed, that it will be there. But it's also not wrong to acknowledge the fact that some of those candidates are off the board now, right?
Yeah.
There are some candidates which could put Penn State into absolutely a bad situation, or certainly not the ideal situation, right? The whole idea behind this was that you're getting in front of the 8 ball by relieving James Franklin when you did in the middle of October, right? You had a leg up on the rest of the competition for this hiring cycle. And
to go out and forge those relationships, do the interviews, have the time to not compress it into 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I think people are upset about the timeline of how long it's taken, how many interviews with no resolution, but that's actually the plan. Like, that was the point, right?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, certainly I think they would have loved to have had somebody earlier than this if that person made sense. I think that there's and look, like, I'm not arguing for or against this. I'm just trying to reflect what it is. And that is finding the right person was the priority, right? Like, and whether it's here and here or here and here, fine. But either way, to know that at the top of the scale is making sure you get the right fit for the job and that taking precedence over the timing portion of this. I think that is like a fundamental core component to this of they wanted to do their due diligence. They did that due diligence. And then through the process, this is the guy that emerged as the one who made the most sense for Penn State, right?
Right.
Like including an acknowledgement of a guy like Mike Elko, who probably would have been considered a top or the top candidate through all of this. Yeah, that didn't work out. And it didn't work out a couple of weeks ago. And so you're constantly keeping in mind what are the other options? What are the other things that you can go to if the things that you prefer don't end up working out?
JC says, like the video, there are 748 people watching. I appreciate him for reminding everybody of that. Super helpful for us. Also, thanks to everybody for being here with the big news. Of course, if this all comes across the finish line, we'll have a breaking news video about it. We'll talk about it more in detail, discuss some of these topics again. So make sure you subscribe here as well. And then I want to get to this one. And Nate, we're coming back to you. Sexton is almost as petty as James Franklin. This is referring to from Antoine. He is referring to the story out there that Jimmy Sexton has been a thorn in the side of Penn State and Pat Kraft specifically during this hiring process because he was upset with the way his client, James Franklin, was fired unceremoniously from the program after the Northwestern game. I wanted to see what you had in terms of your comments or perspective on that aspect of Penn State's search looking and feeling so futile from a public narrative and perception standpoint.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I see a couple of things. One is like Jimmy Sexton has turned into like a boogeyman that
right.
I'm not sure has the grasp or the grip of the sport quite to the extent. I'm not saying he doesn't have a grip on it. He does. He's certainly an influential guy and has a client list that over the last few days has been very active, right? I mean, there's no question about that. But this notion that he is all encompassing, right? Kalani Sitake's agent is not Jimmy Sexton, to my knowledge. I don't think.
No, he's an athlete's first guy. Trace Armstrong's group. I don't know that Trace represents him personally, but that's the group.
Brent Key. He's not a Sexton, I don't think. I mean, look. There are a number of candidates that Penn State has dealt with through this process that are not Jimmy Sexton clients, but I also don't think it's as. I don't think it cannot be for any of these people. This I'm trying to convey like how it works as I understand it is you don't sever those relationships, right? It does not behoove Jimmy Sexton to make a mortal enemy of Penn State. Jimmy Sexton has clients that he would love to put at Penn State. He wants to make money. That's the deal. And so it is also not to Penn State's best interests to preclude itself due to a disastrous relationship with Jimmy Sexton from all of his clients. It doesn't equate. And so like, could there be bad blood there? Absolutely. Sure. Like maybe lurking underneath the surface, but they would never indicate that to each other. And more prominently, I think that there's a somewhat humorous presumption being made here that Jimmy Sexton's loyalty and love for James Franklin is like the most paramount thing in the world. Like all of his business interests and all of this other stuff can go by the wayside because, man, like Jimmy Sexton loves James Franklin. I think they're good.
Penn State is, from what I understand, Nate, and I'm not trying to get into any details or specifics here, but generally my understanding and what I've been talking to people about when it comes to what Penn State's willing to pay for a head coach in this cycle is they're not looking to underpay. And if Jimmy Sexton wants to get one of his clients maximum value and have another top 5 coach paid in college football, and Penn State is flashing a bag of money, that's not going to, he's not going to turn that down, to kind of just underline those things. But also, it would be like malpractice on his part to do so when he can potentially, I don't know, like let's just go crazy and say reset coaching salaries or, something like that. Like if that's on the table, he's not going to be like, but they did James dirty.
Can you imagine the response of his client list?
Yeah.
If that was the thing of, hey, I'm what, and truly, I don't know all of these guys' representation, but like if Alex Golish is represented by Jimmy Sexton and Alex Golish wanted this job and Jimmy Sexton was like, well, you could have had it, but I like James Franklin too much, so you're not available. That's not a job that's available to you. Like that's just not. That doesn't pass the smell test, unfortunately. I'm sorry, guys.
Fitz, any thoughts here? We're coming to the end of my prepared questions and conversation points, but I know that there's a ton of stuff out there. The chat has a ton of questions, but I just want to know like what loose threads here haven't we talked about that you're interested in?
Not really. I think that it's worth circling back around in that, if this does fall through and something else does fall through, Bob Chesney was not announced to UCLA, but he is the top guy for UCLA that to our knowledge has not signed with UCLA. Like if he misses on both of those guys, which are, both fairly high on the board, I think you could say, then it's going to be looked at in the light that our chat has already deemed it as. The Heartline stuff, man, I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, you don't listen.
There are, and maybe that these are some new people because we do have, I'd say, quite a few more people than are normally here on a Tuesday because of the magnitude of the news and what we're talking about today. And I would say, just from my perspective, as a compliment to you guys, as guys who know the facts and like people are going to come here to specifically hear what you have to say, but they might not be at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. And so here's a great reminder that we've been telling you, like, there's all this information out there. Not all these guys are candidates. So subscribe right now. And I know that we're coming maybe to the end of this coaching search. At a certain point, it has to end. But the details about that, the guys and the names that are not part of this are also like a thing that we've discussed for quite a while over on the site. And if you're showing up here and being like suggesting more names now that we're down to like, hey, here's the name, and everyone's throwing out new names of like Matt, Patricia, whatever. We've been talking about this over on the site for a while. In fact, it looks a little bit like the live chat. So just check us out. Like that, these guys have been doing a lot of great work. The hot boards, the insight on the message boards, all that stuff. We've had this conversation a couple of times, but maybe not right here. So that's kind of so that's where we sit in this situation of not everything's going to get into the 60 minutes of this show when we have so much other things to get to, like the fact that I did still kind of want to talk about Rutgers at some point today, but I don't know at this point. Like I don't think that's going on. Nate, any final thoughts for you? Or sorry, Vince, what are you going to say?
I'm sorry, I just want to jump in here. Kentucky did hire and fire in a day, and I think what I've learned is that the head start I don't think meant much for Penn State. I think the head start, one of the bigger parts of the head start was not giving James Franklin a chance to turn it around, because if he did turn it around, you keep him. And I think that that's worth noting. And I think that's not it's not singular to Penn State. I think Florida did the same thing with Billy Napier. Like they fired him after a win. Like, so like there's an aspect of getting him out of there before he can do more harm. But in that case, winning and turning things around I guess in Pat Kraft's mind would have been more harm than good. Like that's what I'm thinking. A guy like, Stoops at Kentucky, so they back-channeled Will Stein. I mean, this is one that Will Stein's a Louisville guy, just like Braum over there at Louisville, where the opportunity matched up really well for him to come home. And I think that they probably, and this is just me speculating, they probably had a really, really good indication that Will Stein was going to come before they fired Stoops, because that's how that works. Where I see this with the Penn State thing, or with the entire Penn State search, there's nobody but maybe like Bob Chesney adjacent. Like there's nobody that jumped out to you during this search that said, this is a Pennsylvania guy. This is a guy that has all the connections in the region. This is a guy that works for everything. And this is a guy that has worked out at this level. Like you think back to when Penn State hired James Franklin, there were only a few guys, a few coaches that made sense at that point. James Franklin was one of them. Al Golden was in it. There was a couple other names out there, but like the tunnel vision, the fixation on guys that match up well with what you're looking for, I don't think really existed in this search. And that's going to be, when we look back on this last 51 days, I think it is, that's going to be where your head's in a blender in all this stuff, is how does this come to it clearly without a plan. I mean, Matt Rule, I think you could label that as the plan. Like, I think it's probably unfair to put it that black and white, but like, Matt Rule goes 9-3 this year, and all of a sudden he's Penn State's head coach, I think. But things happen. Football happens. And that's what we got in the last 51 days. So I just think that when comparing it to other jobs, the lack of a candidate pool that we thought might be there was not there. And the interest level, like, did Pat Kraft overplay his hand, underestimate the brand? I think so. But that's where we find ourselves right now. That does not mean that if Penn State hires Kalani Sitake, that it's a failure. Like, this guy is good. He's a good coach. Like it's so fascinating to me to see the locking onto preferences here. And then all of a sudden this guy comes out of left field seemingly, and he's a bad coach or he's a bad fit or whatever like that. It goes back to what I said earlier. You don't know how it's going to work out. So I'm very curious to see how it does things. It very, very, very much could end up costing Pat Kraft his job in the long term, but there's going to be a long term. He's not going to turn around and get fired this week, like, because he hasn't signed a coach yet. Nate, right? Like, I'm not overstepping my bounds there by suggesting that this is a, what do you call it? 2-3 year process that we see how it plays out.
Nate
stopped listening to me. Sorry.
No, I heard it.
I don't blame him.
I heard it. Yeah, I don't know exactly where to go. I think that something I said, and I honestly, I don't even remember if it was before or after Franklin got fired, but the notion of Penn State's appetite for variability that I don't know matched the commitment to getting rid of James Franklin. things are deteriorating quickly here. The like this urge and this need to rid Penn State of James Franklin was overwhelming by the end. And I want to be absolutely clear that there is no revisionist history here. Like, it was even the Franklin supporters were out on James Franklin within the fan base. I'm not saying that was necessarily a reflection of donors, but
yeah,
they were out and voiced being out. And so that was, hey, this has to happen. James Franklin has to be removed. And certainly there are people today that, as this process has unfolded, now have the opinion of, well, maybe he didn't have to go, right? But like, no, it was an overwhelming sentiment from fans at that moment that
right.
James Franklin had to go. Okay, that's fine.
Here's a question, Nate,
you just have to acknowledge
in retrospect.
Go ahead.
So in that moment right now, Northwestern, like, it's haunting watching the video back that Fitz got for us of him leaving the tunnel to the booze and like all those things of that's how it ended for James Franklin. They weren't going to be home for a month. The next home game was Indiana. So like, as much as that toxic environment was absolutely in that moment the reason you fired James Franklin, et cetera, you didn't have to do that until after, like, they're not beating Ohio State. Like, there's a great opportunity for you to do that right before the Indiana game. Like, it just felt like there was a second off ramp after the toughest stretch of the schedule that they decided, we're not gonna do that. And then the timeline of what we have of 51 days of this coaching search is where we sit now. So yeah, I find that interesting.
There's no one way to do this, but I think Fitz's point about not allowing for that, not giving him the opportunity to beat Ohio State, because that at that point, and you could say it's unlikely, sure, it's unlikely, but if Penn State beats Ohio State at Ohio State, does Pat Kraft have the political capital to fire James Franklin, even at whatever it would, like 4-4 at that point? Maybe, probably not. So yeah, I just think this process has a level of uncertainty that makes everyone uncomfortable, but is also the level of uncertainty that Penn State asked for in a lot of cases, right? And so this is, and again, I mean, I don't want this to come across as new, because it's not. I've been saying this for months. This is the cycle of cycling. They have, like, Penn State is part of that process, which the rest of college football, there's a reason why Kirk Ferentz is like the longest tenured coach in America, right? Because, and why the next one after that, like, you just don't see these long tenured coaches at the most insane college football programs. Like the one, you have to be a little unhinged to, as a fan base, as the way you operate as a program. If you want to win a national championship, that's what the climate and the environment needs to be to a certain extent, or has proven itself out to be in college football, that this is the way that these programs operate. Penn State's in it. And guess what? Like, there is a downside to that. Ohio State, like, and you can't tell me otherwise. If Ohio State lost 3 games last year, or lost in the first round of the playoff last year after losing to Michigan, Ryan Day's probably gone, right? Yeah. Like there's an alternate timeline there.
He was already gone because he lost to Michigan too many times. Absolutely. I just want to clear something up, because you hear something you don't like and then you immediately jump on it. I'm not saying that Franklin wasn't going to be fired in this scenario. Stephen Light said Franklin had to be fired. What I'm saying is, you made the decision in your mind to fire James Franklin if you're Pat Kraft because of the environment that was there. Okay, fine, great. You don't want to incite the bloodbath that happened and the perception bloodbath that happened of all these things from the national media being like, wait a minute, he was in the college football playoff last year. If he loses another big game in October, which you probably think he's going to do because you're out on James Franklin, then you're just setting a different timeline for the decision. But Pat Kraft said once he decided that was the decision, he decided that was the decision, he was going to make it. I at least appreciate from that perspective of a man who's like doesn't want to talk to a guy to his face and being like, I'm going to fire you in 3 weeks. He just decided to fire him. But that is like the calculus, the impulse, a little bit of the impulsivity of what the perception of the coaching search has been because of the when it happened, not that it did happen. I am not saying James Franklin should not have been fired. Let me say it again, because the internet wants to hear what it wants to hear. I wasn't saying that. I was saying you can be more calculated about how you do it to not have this situation play out so that fans are here today on December 2nd saying that Pat Kraft is a moron, which is what's happening in the chat and on the internet. Anyway, totally sidetracked. Final thoughts here. It's been an hour. We've talked about this particular subject. It's been a long time coming. I appreciate both of you for being here and for having this conversation with us about this. And I mean with us because genuinely, like, I'm a part of the audience and learning stuff from you guys every time we sit down and have talks like this. So thank you. Final thoughts. We're going to get to that here on the show. Fitz, I'm going to start with you because, I'm hoping it'll be like 60 seconds.
Yeah, if he gets it across the line and he wins, it's good. If he doesn't and he loses, it's bad. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's been fun. It's been a very, very venting session here. I've been fascinated with the chat and our show because I'm trying to do both at the same time, and I clearly cannot keep up. So we appreciate
me either.
That's been engaging on that, regardless of how insane you might sound. But no, we thank everybody for that. But no, I mean, it's one of those things. I'm fascinated how this is going to play out. I mean, you're looking at things changing by the hour right now with Sitaki. There's still a real chance that he stays at BYU, but if Penn State hires him, that's a good hire. Like, from a football standpoint, now he's got a lot to accomplish. If he would come to Penn State, he would have to surround himself with people from the region that know this. Because you asked earlier, and sorry, this is longer than 60 seconds, but you asked earlier about what the benefit is there. Or excuse me, what the detriment would be coming in with no relationships. Those guys are the ones that get players to campus for you. Those guys are the ones that have the trust from coaches, from trainers, from agents, from whomever to get people to campus. Penn State's still going to be a draw in terms of recruiting. You're still going to get here. The whiteout is still going to be a thing like that. All those things are going to be appealing to some, but you've got to get them in the door. And when it's exactly what James Franklin did when he hired Terry Smith in 2014. Terry was at Temple. I don't want to say an afterthought, but like a guy that was not really thought of as an impact player at that point because he was 2 years removed from being a high school AD. Now all of a sudden he comes in, you get Pittsburgh kids in, you get Philly kids, you get a lot of benefits from hiring the guys that people trust. And I think that is the biggest hurdle, an initial hurdle that Sitaki would face coming to Penn State.
Nate, what are you working on this week over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com to further the conversation we just had here?
Yeah, just obviously keeping tabs. I don't, and Fitz, like, not to argue, but I don't think it's a changing by the hour situation. I think that there is a climate and an ecosystem that makes it seem like this is a changing by the hour situation, but I don't.
Yeah. There's an incentive structure to make this be a play-by-play and a blow-by-blow for sure.
Well, I think that everyone needs to, and they don't have to, but this is my suggestion to the wide world. This was always a proposition of Penn State and the Penn State brand and the Big Ten Conference and the opportunities to win a national championship at Penn State and whatever the numbers are. That, like, it's just, I feel like it's missing the point. This isn't about money because the money will be probably in the same ballpark regardless of what Penn State offers. Like, if BYU wants him that much, if BYU feels that committed to him, they'll do that, right? Can you win a national championship at BYU? Can you win a national championship at Penn State? Versus, can you feel whatever you feel about your alma mater and, your faith, the way that you feel at BYU, can you feel that same thing at Penn State? And then ultimately, through this process, you got to make a decision. And it's not a right or wrong answer. It just is what it is. And Penn State will have to live with that, right? And BYU will have to live with that. But it is up to the candidate to it is so easy to talk about all the things that make sense and all the things you like. And I mean, I think Fitz, like, we've been through it. Everybody in their life has one of those moments or one of those junctures where it can be anxiety inducing to the tallest degree. But at some point you got to make a choice, and you make that choice, and then the chips fall where they may. But Penn State will be certainly fine, but it'll be okay. It'll be okay either way, right? If he decides not to go to Penn State will turn to its next step. If he decides to come to Penn State, then Penn State got its guy. Penn State got the guy that they narrowed in on, had the best conversations with, found the best fit for what they want to do and the future that they see for Penn State. One thing that I do want to bring up, I think that college football has changed in ways toward the NFL that are still not recognized, including, does anybody have a problem when, does anybody know where, and trust me, I understand the conflict of this. Does anybody know where head coaches are from in the NFL?
Coordinators, typically.
No, but I'm saying what region
where
of
they
the country they're from,
Oh.
where they
Oh.
grew up, right? And you're
No.
saying, it's because of recruiting that becomes this massive element in college football. Yes. Fitz, players and their families care overwhelmingly about the financial offer that is happening. That is what recruiting in college football is about right now. Yeah, if all else is equal, then you can start playing into those down the line factors. But if you've got, and this has happened all over the sport, if you've got a guy with a magnetic personality who leads and who wins, if the numbers are right and everything else is right, they will continue to appeal, right? It will continue to be an appealing place for football players to come and with their families to make that decision to go to Penn State. If you don't have a magnetic personality, if you don't lead well, if you don't win games, and if the money is not right, then you're not. It's talent acquisition. That's it. That's the name of the game.
So one last thing from me, and then we'll get out of here. And this is going to be
under 60 seconds.
Under 60 seconds.
Just like I just did.
Very much. It is very much true that Salt Lake City is full of Mormons. But did you know that the Mormon religion was born in Palmyra, New York? So don't tell me that my cousins who live in Rochester and are Mormons, that there aren't Mormons on the East Coast. They are literally everywhere. And there is a connection to the East Coast. I don't want to have the conversation about religion at all, but it keeps coming up in this conversation. So I just wanted to point that fact out here on the as we get out of the show, that if you are a Mormon, you make a pilgrimage to upstate New York once in your lifetime to go to a pageant where they put on the Book of Mormon thing that they do. So just like everyone, you think you know all the things about the thing, but unless you probably don't. So just let the thing play out and let everyone, let's just see where this goes. And as Big Ten Spirit said, can't wait to see where this conversation devolves to next. I don't think you had Palmyra, New York on your bingo card, but that's where we are. Throw everything out.
I can't wait till random BYU media finds this and they have no idea that you actually have a connection, and they think you're just being.
And I've been there, okay? I've been to the pageant, so we'll talk to you later. We're done now. We're going to come back tomorrow. I think we're going to talk about Rutgers, maybe. Like, we're going to talk more about this, I think, maybe. Get into some more of, like, Kalani Sitake. There's more to go here. We got an extra 10 minutes for you, but it's not enough time. So we're back on the BWI Live Show tomorrow at 10 a.m. Like the video, subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, please like, subscribe, 5-star reviews. Always helpful. We'll talk to you later.